psychotic disorder, and they treat it with very, very serious medications. Very serious medications, and you'll see that in there too. You had Dr. Abloh talk to you about these medications, and Dr. Kelly a little bit. You know, the Seroquels, the Depakotes, the antipsychotic medications. Antipsychotic medications, a very serious course of medication. Antidepressive medications, mood stabilizers. His mood swings, he's depressed, he has dissociative psychotic symptoms. This is not just what Dr. Abloh is telling you. This is what, when you read the records, you'll see 10 people telling you. In those records, because a lot of people write those records, you're also going to see opinions from nurses and some aides and some other people as well, and probably some psychologists who at different times say, you know, he's doing this to get a DYS. He's doing this and whatever. But the suggestion they're making is he's not sick. But we know he's sick. Forget the legalese of this, Roman. You know he's sick. You know he's sick. Look what he has done. Look what, after he was outside of the DYS umbrella, wasn't getting sent to psychiatric hospitals anymore, kind of fell in the cracks. Look what he has done. He has spent his life essentially without a home he could live in, other than going to his parents' home, and they'd get tired of him because they couldn't take him, and he'd go to his girlfriend, who was the mother of his child's home, and she suggested to you that he was a great guy and normal, but then she, of course, had to say how truly verbally abusive he was when he drank, and physically abusive, and she'd have to get him to leave. And we know from Dr. Abloh that the drinking is a self-medication process. And when Miss Stevenson, his girlfriend, finally was honest with her, she said, yeah, my normal became a very bizarre universe. You know, and he was drinking all the time because he was drinking to self-medicate symptoms. He was drinking because his illness was presenting itself in a way that he couldn't take the anxiety, he couldn't take the pressure, he couldn't take the feelings that was coming out in him. And after he was outside the DYS umbrella, Division of Youth Services umbrella, you see a man who gets most of his medical treatment at this point because he's staying with, as I said, his parents, then Stevenson, then some friends, then the street. You see somebody who can't, he's helpless, he's hapless, he's hopeless, and he's helpless. He can't keep a job. He's 30 years old and he's had 2 jobs, 2 relatively menial jobs that he couldn't even keep, that he had for a short period of time. He has no real place to live that he can call his own. Anybody can kick him out at any time. He's got no job. He's a deeply disturbed individual. He can't take care of himself, so periodically it was probably a benefit to him to get put back in jails. It's the only place he probably got square meals, or one of the only places he got them, and really he got some treatment there. I mean, a lot of the stuff you hear from these records, you need to remember, it's not when he's outside on his own, not taking any medications because there's no way to control or monitor him. That's when he's actually in psychiatric facilities, or he's in the inpatient medical stuff at the Suffolk County House of Correction, the Worcester County House of Correction, or Bridgewater, where you've got doctors looking at him, you've got doctors medicating him, and he's still not well. He's still not well. But Dr. Kelly would have you believe he's just an antisocial person, and that's a personality disorder, and we saw it earlier, we saw it later. He's just a piece of work, but he's not sick. I ask you to just be honest with yourselves. That's all I want you to do. If you're honest with yourselves and keep your word, to take the emotion out of this and just look at this and a kind of a timeline of what happened to this man, the deterioration that happened to this man and when he became an adult and got out of DYS. Whatever verdict you come up with, respectfully, the defense will be fine with. But you have Dr. Kelly saying that it's an antisocial. He agrees that there's no preclusion from having an antisocial personality disorder and having other disorders with it. It's called comorbidity, having borderline personality disorder, which Dr. Abloh suggested to you was an access to disorder, but can be very severe, have psychotic dissociative features, and certainly serve as a basis for that criminal responsibility model we were talking about too. And I will get back to that in a moment, but suffice it to say that I respectfully suggest to you that Dr. Kelly's analysis of what mental disease is just not consistent with the instructions you're going to get or consistent with the law. It simply is not. You as the jury make a determination of what a mental disease is. He doesn't, I don't, judge doesn't, you do. You do. You have to find a mental disease or defect. Mental disease or mental disorder. Mental diseases and disorders are found in that book. There's a lot of them. Dr. Kelly would have you believe it's only this axis 1, but that's simply not involved. I suggest to you that's simply not the law. It's not in any case. It's not in any medical thing. It's a legal term, and you figure out legal terms when a certain medical issue, medical condition meets that legal term. It's completely up to you. The only prohibition, the only caveat there is what the judge will instruct you on. The judge is going to instruct you that if it's simply a repetitive criminal activity or simply an antisocial action, that can never be the kind of mental disease or deficiency. The whole notion is that someone, if he either, not both, but either does not have the substantial capacity to understand the wrongfulness of his act, okay, the wrongfulness. Now, he may even think that it's against the law and other people might want to hurt him, but is it wrong? Is it wrong to him? Does he have that ability with the mental illnesses that he has to be insightful, or is his actions reflexive rather than reflective? And the second prong of that, of course, is the notion that he also has to have, if he doesn't have the substantial capacity, to conform his behavior to the dictates of the law, requirements of the law. If he doesn't have that, then he also is not criminally responsible. And I suggest to you, you heard Dr. Abloh tell you, that he held that opinion to a reasonable degree of psychiatric certainty. I would tell you that, and I would suggest to you, because if it seems like I'm expressing my personal beliefs, they don't matter. What matters is what I suggest to you and the law that I give to talk to you about it. So if I slip into that, or anybody slips into it, you got to disregard that. Because my personal beliefs are mine, and they're not yours, and they're not to be considered. But Dr. Abloh has told you, based on his investigation of the case, and respectfully I will tell you that I suggest to you that you should consider someone's not only knowledge of psychiatry, which I would suggest both Dr. Abloh and Dr. Kelly are experts at, but also their knowledge of the case. I mean, I suggest to you that based on the testimony you heard from Dr. Kelly, who truly has a fairly comprehensive knowledge, I would say, of psychiatry, but he also has to know the facts of this case. He has to understand these crimes. He has to understand this criminal. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what you heard yesterday, what it should mean. You heard it. You got to know what it means. But there was a startling, respectfully, deficiency in what he didn't know about the case. We talk about gap filling. He doesn't believe gap filling exists, at least with regard to the defendant, but certainly I will tell you, he made a lot of assumptions that turned out not to be the case about the facts of this case, a lot of them. And at one point he told you that you should be looking for activities that would reflect on the mindset and frame of mind and frame of reference of this defendant closer to 2013. But respectfully, you heard him yesterday talk about a lot of things in the past. He focused on that and suggested it was okay to ignore, essentially to ignore a lot of the things that I respectfully suggest to you indicates to me that he's just crazy. and that he suffers from a mental disease, a mental illness, that in fact has robbed him of his ability to at least, at the very least, the capacity to conform his behavior, you know, and certainly perhaps even the ability to differentiate right from wrong, because either of those is independently sufficient for you to find him not guilty by reason of insanity. You know, and if he's found not guilty by reason of insanity, you will hear from the judge. You'll hear from the judge that he just doesn't walk free. You'll hear what happens to him, what the state can petition for, the additional confinements on his liberty and restrictions on his liberty that will occur. So you shouldn't think he's just walking free, because respectfully, you're sitting in the jury box, you're hearing about somebody who's essentially a monster out there doing things that are unspeakable, and one would not be surprised if it was going through your mind, how can I let this person out? How can I let this monster back out on my fellow citizens and me? How can we do that? Not us, my kids. And that's a thought. And that's a thought you have to put out of your mind. You have to put it out of your mind, and a feeling, because it's not necessarily, and it will not be, the judge will instruct you what's really going to happen, but that's not what this case is all about. What this case is all about are principles. The principle of one of the basic principles, apart from the presumption of innocence, apart from the burden being on them to prove each and every element to all of you, including sanity beyond a reasonable doubt. This case is about a notion that if someone is ill, as reflected in the criminal responsibility model, is respected in a variety of things in Anglo-Saxon law, but the notion that if somebody is sick, if somebody is truly sick on the level that we're talking about here, that his accountability is proportionally reduced. And horrific crimes, unpopular people, unpopular defendants, they're hard to judge. They're hard to represent. It's a difficult process. It's a difficult process. But you have to work through that. You have to. If this system works, and if this system makes any difference, you have to. You have to. Because the law imposes a duty on you, and that duty is to determine whether these people have proven, among other things, have proven his sanity beyond a reasonable doubt. That's respectfully, the core question that remains with you. And for you, I started to tell you that Dr. Kelly, I would suggest to you, would like to ignore a lot of very serious matters that go right to, and serious facts that go right to that. He would like to ignore that because it doesn't fit in to his theory that all you have here is kind of an antisocial personality. The man who showed up, the Edwin Alemany who showed up on the 23rd of July and the 24th of July of 2013 and did what that man did, and did it the way that man did it, and did it with obvious disregard to most of the human values we feel and to the common sense that we impose as an overlay on things we do, is not a sane person. And regardless of how much Dr. Kelly would like to respectfully not consider that, maybe shove it under the rug, because it doesn't fit with the notion that he has that this man is sane and this man is simply antisocial. That wasn't an antisocial man who, within an 18-hour period, an 18-hour period in a life, I mean, he's committed, you'll see, you'll have his records, a variety of other crimes, but petty crimes compared to this. In an 18-hour period, this man, because he has an antisocial disorder, in his own neighborhood, with witnesses in some cases, with what I would consider a lack of any common sense regard for what he was doing, tried to slaughter 3 people? Respectfully, does that fit your idea of somebody who kind of likes to simply piss other people off, or does it feel like the diagnoses that you'll see in place, major depression with psychotic features, bipolar disorder, you heard what they mean, the mood swings, that you know what a psychosis is. It's somebody who looks at the world so differently. There's a break in reality. What they see is not what you see. A man who says he's heard voices for his entire life. This is not something that came up in the context of this case. This is something that's come up since he was 13, 14, 15 years old, repeatedly. And Dr. Kelly will tell you that, anybody can say that, and because he's not doing it by Dr. Kelly's rules, it can't be true. And minimizing the level of mental distress and illness that this man experiences, whether he suffers it or other people suffer it. He experiences it, he lives it, it's him. And he's lived it his whole life. He's helpless. He can't take care of himself. If Dr. Kelly is right, you have to ask yourself, why did this happen? Respectfully, why over an 18-hour period did this man walk out of a house, walk down the street, and find Alexandra Cruz? We have no evidence that he had any idea who Alexandra Cruz was. It wasn't even a robbery. He punches her, he knocks her down, he drags her into a dark alley, or a dark lot. He drags her into a dark lot. And she says, I'll give you whatever you want. I'm paraphrasing. Take my money, take my pocketbook, or whatever. And what does he say? I don't want your fucking money. I'm going to kill you. I want your life. If you as a jury think that's an antisocial personality speaking, and that's where it stops, and all the other doctors that have come up with psychotic references for him and diagnoses over a long period of time, and have prescribed an awful lot of psychoactive antipsychotics, antidepressants, mood stabilizers to try to bring him back into the human race, with some success when it's being monitored and done, then that's what you're going to believe, and there's nothing I can do about it. But I think the proof of the pudding in the eating in this case is Dr. Kelly is telling you that, he wanted to get some benefits, he wanted to get this, he wanted to get that. When people are crazy, they can still want to get some benefits now and then. They can. But if you think that he's not crazy, that he has spent his life pretending to be sick, pretending to hear voices, because he likes being in psychiatric hospitals or whatever his motivation, then so be it. But I would also tell you, with the proof of the pudding and the eating methodology here, is if that's all it was, if this wasn't the natural progression of a very sick individual and a deteriorating condition. And remember, when he was at DYS, he had medical care. He had monitoring. He had psychotropic medications. He had individual therapy. He had group therapy. Apart from whatever boasting he did, because he's the big man and whatever, and he didn't want people to think he was as sick as he was, as Dr. Abloh suggested, which seemed pretty reasonable to me. Now, I'm not sick, I can just play the system. He's sick. You know he's sick. You know he's sick. All the doctors that looked at him for 5 years when he was in DYS knew he was sick. Maybe it's 4 years. Maybe it's 4.2 years. They knew he was sick, and they knew he was really sick. That's why they gave him not simply an antisocial diagnosis. That's why they called him psychotic, bipolar, major depression, dissociative features, psychosis not otherwise specified. One thing I suggested to one of the doctors in my examination was the DSM is a book. They like the book, they don't like the book, they use the book. And it classifies diseases, disorders of the mind. But people are not a book. People are a constantly evolving mosaic of illness when they're sick. They're not the same every day. There's internal triggers, there's external triggers. In terms of internal triggers, for 15 years he's been saying he hears voices. He hears voices. He didn't stop saying he heard voices when he got out of DYS and could get more benefits. Allegedly, that if you believe that to be a reason, I suggest to you that's, as this has played itself out, I suggest to you it was fairly obvious that his sickness was very real. Very real. Taking it back a bit, or taking it into 2013 again. So what does he do? He's with Miss Cruz. And then he says to her, "Oh, you're not the woman I was looking to kill. No, that's a woman who was pushing a baby carriage with a white shirt and was going to be with a man. Shame on me." Picks her up, gives her her stuff back. She doesn't escape. She walks away. She walks away. Presumably quite confused, scared, and dazed, but she walks away. Does that sound like the product of a rational mind and reflective thinking? Or is there something about that that makes you wonder, wow, that's pretty bizarre. That suggests something on a much deeper, much more poignant, and much sicker level than simply somebody who perhaps has a minor antisocial problem with people. And you would think that after doing that, a rational person, it's 5 o'clock in the morning, a rational person would say, whoa, that's not very good. She's going to call the police could be here. And remember, everything that happens is in his neighborhood. People know him in that neighborhood. She actually remembered at some point she had met him before. This is his neighborhood. It's like, I suggest to you, it's like robbing the convenience store that you've gone into before, where people might even know you. This is his neighborhood. And what does he do? He stays in his neighborhood. Stays in his neighborhood. And finds Amy Lord. And enters that incredibly horrific set of events that if any of us could change, believe me, we would in a heartbeat. And I've already talked to you about what happened to Amy Lord and how just the act of the killing itself is respectfully the product of an incredibly diseased mind. That's fueled by an illness and the depth of an illness that it's like seeing the reflection of something. You see a wave coming through from the middle of a lake. You can assume perhaps a rock has been thrown in there. Well, there was a rock thrown in there, and you're seeing it reflected in the reality that you can see. And what does he do? What does he do after he kills Amy Lord? What does he do? He's already kind of tried to kill someone that morning and given it up. So a rational person, a non-sick person would assume that, oh, I better lay low for it. What does he do? Within an hour, he actually kills someone. And he kills her in a way, again, that I suggest certainly speaks to a much deeper illness and a much more deeper pathology. And what does he do? I mean, you heard the testimony as well as I did. He goes to a local gas station. He goes in there. He buys $10 worth of gas. Okay. In Amy Lord's Jeep. Amy Lord's Jeep. I mean, if in fact he has left, which it appears he did, her body at the Stony Brook Reservation, it will be found. They know what kind of car she has. He thinks it's okay to drive her car around the neighborhood. Meets his friend J.D. Lee there. They have a nice conversation. Buys gas. This is a full-service station. Buys gas. Guy gives $10, he puts some in. Then what does he do? He buys another $10 worth of gas, only uses $3 or $4 of it. Which of course then raises the presumption that since he was going to go torch the car, needed some gas in the back seat, which is what I suggest to you, you can infer happened then, and certainly what the police feel. that he took the gas and he poured it in the back seat and then went and torched the car. Where did he torch the car? In Worcester? No. He torched the car blocks away in his same neighborhood. Drawing attention to himself and disregarding the risk that I would suggest to you that a rational person who was not suffering from serious mental illness would consider. And then what does he do? Okay, I mean, this would certainly, I don't say this in a, I mean to minimize it. What does he do? He acts like nothing's happened. Nothing happened. He has just slaughtered Amy Lord. He's torched her car. He started the day by trying to do the same thing until he for whatever reason, he broke it off. To Alexander Cruz, what does he do? Does he get out of town for a while? Does he say, oh, whoa? No. He goes and buys cards, lottery cards, phones. You know, he goes out and just acts like nothing has happened. He's happy. Not only has nothing happened, we have evidence that when he was in getting a telephone, as Slim Shady, getting a telephone, he's just garrulous. He's manic, he's walking around, he's talking to everybody, he's paying for other people, everything he can to draw attention to himself. He's paying for strangers' transfer fees, he can't stop moving, he can't stop talking, he can't stop anybody. He's happy. He's in there, and then he leaves, and he takes his boys and his friends out eating and drinking at Tahiti's. He's celebrating. I mean, it's disgusting, it's repulsive, it's revolting, but what does it tell you about him? That day, what does it tell you? Is this man who, after he got out of UIS and wasn't getting more medications, wasn't getting monitored, wasn't getting the proper treatment, does it tell you that perhaps his situation has been cycling downward for some time, his disease is getting worse to where it's completely taken over him and controlling him, that he has moments of respite when he gets put in different jails to basically get medicated and have their in-house services take a look at him and deal with him? Respectfully, I think that's what it should suggest to you. But that day, he takes his friends out, he comes back. I don't remember the exact sequence of events, but he goes back to the apartment and ends up having a horrible argument with his girlfriend. Horrible argument with his girlfriend. And his girlfriend doesn't want you to believe that she's an idiot, doesn't want you to believe that she could have seen how horrendous he was but stayed with her anyway. So she's minimizing for a while. She's saying, oh, well, he's normal. He's two different people. When he drinks, you know, he's got some problems, but he's a great dad, and he's a great partner, and I may be overstating it a bit. If I am, remember that. But at the end of the day, she jumps off the stand and leaves, because I'm pushing a little bit. So what really happened? How do you really perceive him? How have you experienced them? And she's more truthful. She says, my normal became a very strange normal. It was abusive physically and mentally. It was horrible. And it got all that much worse when he drank. Well, how often did he drink? And what I suggest she said, and your recollection is what counts, not mine, is that on a variety of occasions she said he drank all the time. We know from Dr. Abloh that he drinks to self-medicate. He drinks. It's an independent disorder that at some point is a problem, but certainly one reason he drinks is to quiet the voices, is to quiet the anxiety, is to quiet the pressure that he feels building in himself. That's why he drinks. And you hear from Miss Stevenson, who minimizes it because she does not want to look like somebody who should have come forward sooner, should have gotten rid of him sooner, and should never have been semi-married to him. I mean, as far as he's concerned, she's his wife. As far as she's concerned, he's her on and off boyfriend. I mean, I don't know what's more minimizing than that. But she tells you what he's all about. So he has another argument with her that night. I mean, what does he do in that argument? Well, we know he's screaming. We know he takes his new phone, and he hadn't had a phone for a long time because he'd been broke, and the only phone he'd been using is hers, and he smashes it because he's in a rage. We don't know where that rage is really coming from, but I suggest he was being fueled by his illness, by the psychopathology that's been deteriorating for a long period of time, with the respites he's had in jail where he couldn't do that much and they controlled him, or hospitals where they control him with medication or whatever. And again, when he doesn't always profess his symptoms in a hospital, you should understand that in hospitals, respectfully, you get certain benefits within the hospital, lesser security, if you don't hear voices, if you don't have problems and they think you're going to act out with other people, whether that's Bridgewater, no matter where it is. It's not that dissimilar in jails. Sorry. But in any event, he is having a fight with Elizabeth Stevenson that makes her actually call up one of his friends, Gary Cataloni, someone, your recollection is probably better than mine, and say, what do I do? He's out of his mind. What do I do? And it's recommended she gets out of there right away, and she does. She gets out, he leaves. Yeah, what does he do? What does he do? Does he, as a rational person might, reflect for a second? This has been an unbelievable day. I can't believe what I've done today. I cannot believe the horror that I've caused and the risk that I'm now in for what I've done in my own neighborhood across the board. I mean, if it wasn't enough that he did these things to drive Amy Lord's car all around, to have people realize he's in the car, and that's even putting aside all the video equipment that's taking pictures of him, which I have no reason to believe he knew about. What does he do? He starts walking down the block in his own neighborhood, and he starts looking for someone else to kill. Call it the way it is, to kill. Not to rob, but to kill. He walks within a block of his house to find somebody to kill. If you think that that is the actions of a rational man who's not deeply, deeply, deeply buried in horrible mental disease, then nothing I say, respectfully, is going to convince you otherwise. This is still within that 24-hour period. Now, whether it was triggered by, once again, the anger that he felt over the rejection by his girlfriend, or whether voices are telling him to do things, as he told Dr. Hablo, really at some point becomes academic. I mean, take a look at what people are doing. Take a look at the context within which they're doing it. He walks down, basically turns a corner. He's in his own neighborhood. It's lighted, very well lighted. There are people around. He goes up to Ashley Paradella, and she's walking her two dogs. And she believes that he was trying to approach her and to do something untoward to her based on the way he came across to her. He gets a phone call. Don't know what phone he was using then, but apparently he gets a phone call, not for the one he smashed. Maybe she just thought he got a phone call. But in any event, that potential attack is thwarted. But within minutes afterwards, minutes, on a street where there are people, as evidenced by the fact there were two witnesses to this event. It's lighted, there's two witnesses, it's not 3:30 in the morning. There are two witnesses who actually see what he's doing. He rushes up, presumably, according to Kaylee Ballantyne, and with no word, no warning or whatever, forces her into the beginning of the outer hallway, downstairs vestibule of her apartment building, or wherever. I could get a fact wrong here and there. It's your recollection that matters. And starts stabbing her. Stabbing her. She's down on the ground. Inexplicably, suddenly, she's being killed. She's a young lady coming home from work or whatever, and suddenly someone's killing her. And she says, take my pocketbook, take my phone, take whatever. And what does he say to her? I don't want that. I want your life. Is that the antisocial person that Dr. Kelly describes? Or is that the person described in the medical records that you've seen and will be seeing and you've heard about here? You did see the exhibit with a different summary chart of the different hospital he was in and whatever. If he had not had, I respectfully suggest to you, a serious illness at the time he went into these hospitals, they wouldn't have given him antipsychotic medication. They wouldn't have given him these serious diagnoses relating to psychotic illness. They would not have. They would not have. And that's what Dr. Abloh told you, and Dr. Abloh also told you what he is suffering from. And it's been a deteriorating situation ever since for him.